here on the screen, that'd be great. If you could just respond to the prompts here on the screen in the Zoom chat, that'd be great. I'll give everyone a good 2 to 3 minutes to do that, and then I'll jump in and get started. So we're asking you to think about your classroom on an average day. What does that look like, sound like, feel like? So feel free to drop an image that best describes that. Just give a little blurb. That's great too. So we'll give another like 2 minutes or so before we begin. Michelle, I love that my classroom is busy with student activity and learning. I love student activities. Students are talking with each other at the beginning and listening to me and asking questions during class. Students are giving their best effort. I love that. Oh, good spirits. I love that, Hector. I'm all about the good vibes classroom as well, so I love to hear that. Give about another 60 seconds or so, then we're gonna jump in, see if anybody else has anything else. Francis says, I love the AP World class. Students happy to be there, discussing readings, current events. Amber says, it depends on the day. And I love that too, because you just never know sometimes. My students are always very much like, Mr. Shaw, we know you have a routine, but we also know you love to throw something in there. So that's always a little, surprise every day. And then obviously they come in every day and they're different every day. So depends on their mood. So that's always interesting. Ooh, Wiley, I also have a sort of like a U-shaped setup because I love that sort of conference room feel for them to talk. And so I really love that as well. That's great. All right, no, so thank you all for your contributions here in the chat. I mostly also just love hearing what other teachers are doing in their classroom, because then I get to take all those great ideas and implement them in my classroom. So thank you all for sharing. Kristen, depends on the hour. I love that. Chatter about lessons, hallway gossip. I love the hallway gossip. I never miss it. Weekend events. That's like teenagers after gym class. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Oh, great. Thank you all so much for sharing that. Well, I'm gonna jump in here and I'm gonna move on. And if you guys could, if you're able to just navigate over to the OER website, that'd be great. I'm gonna jump in and chit chat a little bit, but I want you all to be able to follow along with some of the material that I'm going to be going over. So great to meet all of you. I am Tyrone Shaw. I'm a teacher in Washington, D.C. I teach 9 through 12, but I teach AP for 10th graders, my sophomores. And here's my email up here on the screen. So welcome to the World History Project AP course, which I call WHP AP. This is really a global history course for high school students that is going to be a cohesive approach to learning and understanding the history of the world while simultaneously preparing students for the AP World History exam. And what I really do appreciate is that all of this practice from the WHP AP course is really aligned to the College Board material, but it also gives students such an incredible opportunity to engage with the material. So that's one of the things that we're going to be sharing today, and I look forward to hearing from you all as well, what other ways that you do this. So obviously the AP course is aligned from circa 1200 to the present. So we're going to look at how we use this material, especially these stories, right? The human stories coming out of the materials that I'm going to go over. How are we going to use this to bring our students closer to understanding the human experience, but also prep them to be ready for the AP exam? So obviously we're going to be covering a lot of ground you're going to be covering a lot of ground in the course. We're going to be covering a lot of ground today. So I just want to sort of make sure you have like a full overview of the materials that we offer. So we're going to be looking at some overarching inquiry for our units that we have, and then some specific things about lessons as well. And we'll delve into Unit 1 so you can have a better understanding of this. So hopefully that as you begin your AP journey, for those of you who are teaching AP for the first time, or maybe you're going to be using the WHP AP materials for the first time, just remember you have a wealth of resources here in the WHP AP community. There's a very vibrant community of teachers, and I'm there posting, but mostly I'm just there to like take really good ideas from all the brilliant people like you who show up there and contribute to all of that. So really quickly before we move on, Jason Wilkerson is in the chat. He's going to be our sort of moderator today, and he's going to be helping us with our breakout sessions that we're going to jump into later on. So and he'll be dropping some links in the chat as well. So also if you have any like pressing questions that he can answer, you can throw those in the chat and he will answer those as well. So all right, let's jump into it. So welcome, and this is our agenda. So we're gonna jump in. We're gonna talk about what is the OER project. We're gonna look at the World History AP course that is built. We're going to do 3 different activities. We're going to look at themes, a CCOT deep dive, and a Unit 1 deep dive. And then I want to engage in some questions and answering, because that's going to be super useful for me as well to learn so much about what you all are doing in your classrooms. And I would be happy to answer any other questions that you have about the OER project. So our objectives for today is to preview the Unit 1 of the World History AP course, examine alignment with the CED, which is the course exam description for the College Board, and go through some historical thinking skills and reasoning processes as we're going to come across them in the session. So let's jump in and take a look at, so what is the OER project? So OER stands for Open Education Resources. And so we work with amazing educators, researchers, and academics. And so all of this material that we're going to be going over is free. It's online. It's easy for you to access. It's super comprehensive. And you can really use this throughout your AP course, but obviously there are other materials that are on the OER website as well for other courses than some of you might be familiar with as well. I've used the World History Project for my 9th graders, which is like an on-level course for 9th graders, but it really sets them up because they're kind of familiar with like that's what I call the OER way for when they take me for AP in 10th grade. So that's really, really nice. So we believe in teachers as professionals and work to support their instructional growth. So again, a lot of this is being led by teachers, which is really great because it's people who are in the classroom and their feedback is usually very timely and very meaningful because of, you know, as I like to say, they're in there in the trenches, right? And you're welcome to modify any of this material, because you might see something and you're like, this is great, but I can't do all of this. Well, take the parts that you love, that you're like, this is going to be great for my classroom, this is going to be great for my students, because as many of you were pointing out in the chat earlier, right, it ranges by day to day, right, or even by the hours, Kristen said. So you know your students best. Trust yourself to make those decisions for your classroom. And so one other thing that is really great is that how much of this is based on teacher feedback. So a lot of this is developed around teachers piloting these lessons and using that feedback from teachers that they're getting, that data from their students, to make this better. So then we also have these historical thinking practices, inquiry and skill developments that underpin each of these courses, right? So you can see here on your screen the list of courses, right? You have the big history project, and that's like a foundation with a single narrative and framework for all knowledge. Then you have the world history project, which is the one I told you that I use. I use the 1200 course with my 9th graders. And then you have 2 of those there, the 1750 or the 1200. Actually 3, sorry. Yeah, because you have the early humans, 1200, 1750. Sorry about that. Obviously, you have the AP world, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And then you have the climate project extension. So this is like a supplemental 3-week unit that provides an overview of the global carbon problem. So really quickly, I want you in the chat to just, you know, sort of tell me, are you back in school right now? Are you about to start soon? You know, how are you preparing for getting back into the classroom, right? What are some of the, you know, things that you do to prepare students? What are some of the challenges that you face? You know, what are some of your strengths? So just go ahead and I'll give people like 2 minutes to just drop that in the chat, just so I could get a little bit, know a little bit more about you. And again, as we go through, Kabir from Toledo, Ohio. Nice. And again, if you have any other questions, because I'm going to talk a little bit for the first part of this, then we're going to get into some actual hands-on work. So, Jamie, day 3. Oh, wow. That's incredible. Houston, Texas, we started last Wednesday, introducing the themes. Okay, love it. Hopefully you use the themes video, which we'll go into a little bit today. Ryan says, school started a few days before Labor Day in my district. Okay. Early history project AP, something being considered to support the course. Wonderful. Students start September 5th. Oh, wow. Nice, Michelle. I go back on Monday for just a week of development, and then students come back, what's that, the 28th, I think. What's that? Yeah. So New York doesn't start until September. Maria, I grew up in Westchester County, so I remember those good days of New York, and February break, I missed that. First year teaching world history, start next Wednesday. Well, Michaela, hopefully like today's like really, you know, instructive for you, and you can get some stuff that you can quickly and easily implement. Kristen says from Spokane, Washington. Okay, September 5th, August 23rd. Oliver, I love it. Okay, great. Thank you all. This is great. And Kabir, it's first time teaching AP World. Awesome. So this is wonderful to know, because like I want to make sure that for people who have taught in the past, like, you know, you're getting something out of this too as well. But like for people who haven't, making sure that, you feel somewhat equipped when you leave here today to say, oh, hey, here's some great, like, you know, things that I can jump into as well, especially for those of you who've already started and or about to start. So, you know, jumping into the AP World History project, the World History Project, sorry, AP here in a nutshell, I have to get that terminology right, right? We want to make sure that you're having materials that is relevant, that's important to you. So that's why this feedback from teachers, right, who piloted this course was so crucial, because this material is meant to be really applicable and stuff that you can use all across the country in your classrooms. So again, I know one of the things is that people are always like, well, you know, even with like a textbook, well, is this aligned with what College Board wants? And for the World History Project AP, that's an important point that I want you to know, is that yes, that is aligned. It is aligned with the College Board. And that's going to be something that can like put your mind at ease to know that all the materials that are here are aligned, and you're going to be, you know, working towards actually preparing them for the AP exam. So like the content, the skills, the course structures are all carefully aligned with the course exam description, what I'll call the CED, as we go through, right? And so like the CED identify particular topics within each unit, right? And so you're going to find assets within the AP World material here that will, you know, help students meet what the CED requires. And Jason just dropped in the chat the World History AP syllabus. I don't know if you remember, if you've taught AP before, right? If you haven't, but we used to have to like create a syllabus and submit that, right? And now you can just, you could use this AP syllabus here from the World History Project AP to submit, and that would be approved for your course. So that's very important for you to know. So how is the World History Project AP unit structured, right? So you can see here on your screen, and hopefully you're following along on your own as well. So unit 1 here, Global Tapestry, this is circa 1200 to 1450, right? So you can see that there is going to be all of the different lessons, right, within the unit. And there's so much material here, you're not going to be able to cover every single thing here. Don't make the mistake that I did being a type A person when I first started thinking, oh, I have to do everything. And then I was just, you know, pulling my hair out because I was like, oh, if I don't use everything, I'm doing it wrong. It's not so. There's so many resources here, parse through, and we'll get into that a little later. Pick out what's going to be, you know, really meaningful and useful for you and your classroom to enhance whatever you're doing. Or if you're following along using this, the World History Project AP course as your actual like course and textbook, then you're going to see materials that are going to be like, okay, so these are things that you should do, and these are things that are like some fun things. Here's how you should, you know, align your certain activities, and you can follow along that easily. So what I did was I printed off the teacher materials, which I'll talk about a little later too, and have them in it, and I just literally give a check mark, highlighted and annotated what I was going to use. And that made it really easy for me to then, you know, okay, here are the 5 things I'm going to be using in this unit, and in this order, and on that day, and it made the planning a lot more easier for me. So really quickly, in the unit view here, right, you're going to see an overview of the articles and videos, vocab, mapping, data exploration. That begins in unit 2. Primary source collections, because that's one of the really important things, is exposing your students to a plethora of primary sources so that they're familiar with them when they get to the AP exam. That's going to be really important, and there's so many ways to use the primary sources, and so many great primary sources offering voices from outside of the usual voices that students usually see in primary source collections, which is also nice because the AP exam can be very expansive, and you're like, I've never heard of this source. So it's really great for students to get that exposure. And then these practice progressions, which are really important, because this is how students are building up on their skills over time. Also, one of my things that the students love, which I don't always give the OER credit for, because they're like, oh, Mr. Shaw, this activity was so fun. It wasn't like, yesterday when it was dry. And I was like, oh, do you love it? Right. And there's some great activities in here that I use with students. And that's going to be great for you to like throw in there. And again, they're fun, but they're also meaningful for students to engage with. And then there's some assessment practices as well. Now, really a lot of multiple choice questions, but what I really use the College Board AP Classroom for the multiple choice, but what I really do use a lot here are the LEQs and DBQs and the SAQs, the short answer questions, because that's like the chef's kiss, and that's where my students need a lot of practice, and that's a lot of work I have to do with them. Kate, I saw you said, for those of us that start so much later, what is the suggestion of what to cut and how to modify to compensate for lost time? That is a great question, and hopefully I will answer that for you in a little bit when we come up. But if I don't, when we do the question and answer, do bring that back up, and I can give you some more concrete examples for what I do. That's a great question. I'm sure that's one that's like on a lot of people's minds as well. So when you have, so we have here, right, our unit overview, and then when you click on each lesson, you can see how they're structured here. You have your learning objectives, article summaries, guiding questions, and I literally most of the time just use the guiding questions from here. I use those as more so like class discussions, and then I use the AP questions that they have there with the articles as well, more so for like, formative assessments. And so, and the work is already done, so that's great. You have the video summaries. The videos come with guiding questions. Kate, this is also something that you can think about. The videos, right? Sometimes I'm like, this is a great video and I really want to delve in it with students. I'm going to use this in class. Other times I'm like, I post it to Canvas and I have them do it at home, and answer the questions there. So you can balance out how you want to do that. Some people like to focus more on the articles, the secondary source read-ins for homework, and then discuss them in class. I do a little bit of both. I have some of them for homework, but some of them I'm using in class as well. Usually they've read it for homework too, and then we're going to read it again in class. So you get that double read, and we have this fabulous 3 close reads protocol that we use here that is great. Students are getting multiple exposure to the text, multiple times for them to like go over the content, engage with it, and so you can do that how you think best matches your preference for your classroom and your needs there. And there's like a student view as well to the website, and there's a teacher view as well. So yeah, and what I do is I just go into the student view a lot of the times and copy and paste like the instructions for an activity. And if I need to make any modifications, I just make it, but the instructions are student facing. So you don't have to be changing the student's will to you too, because it's already there for you. And then another thing that I mentioned earlier about how is this connected to the CED, the College Board CED, right? The thematic focus of each topic, right? Those are all addressed in the assets in the lesson, right? The historical developments, right? So what is that historical development? There are going to be examples of it, whether in a secondary source reading or primary source reading or whatever activity that you're going to be doing as well. Lessons include, right, the learning objectives for students as well, which is really important. And then the guiding questions for the articles and the videos, which I was just talking about, right? These ask students about how, right, the content in that assets relate to the AP topic or skill. And so that's why I said sometimes I'm like, okay, this is something we're going to be doing in class because I want to make sure you really get it. And then for time purposes, I'm like, this is something that you can do at home as well. So use that to budget my time. And then the illustrative examples. These are great because throughout the lessons, you're going to find an example of one of these illustrative examples. So the College Board lists several, right? Students don't need to know several. I usually try to do at least two, but sometimes for time's sake, it's just one. And I emphasize, hey, this is one that you should remember for this illustrative examples, right? So for example, this one here about state system in the Americas, right? Maya city-states is like a really major one that students can identify, although technically, right, that is pre the 1200, but the AP counts it as, right? The Inca could be another one that you could use as well. Yes, so it is, yes, so the World History Project AP course materials, right, can stand in as a course material itself because it is approved by College Board to be used as a course. And you can see that in the syllabus that Jason linked to earlier. So that's really good. And one more thing that I want to point out, right, in terms of like the lesson numbering, they're not always going to be one for one with the CED. So if you are looking and you're like, well, this doesn't match up, just understand that like not everything is one for one with the CED. So sometimes things are going to be collapsed and sometimes it's going to be more spread out. So don't freak out if you're like, oh, I don't see that it matching up directly. All right, so then let's go over here and take a look at what is actually the content here in the courses, right? So first we have these articles, right? These are written specifically to align with certain AP CED historical developments, as well as offerings from other courses, right? So if you've used the World History Project courses, right, whether the origins, the 1200 or the 1750, you'll see some of these articles here as well. So, so you're going to see articles, both primary source and secondary articles being used across these courses. And there's like a great mix as well, which is really nice. And then the activities. So these you can download into like a Google Doc or Word. I'm a Microsoft Office person with Canvas. So I download the student-facing versions in the Word document, and I upload them so students can type right into them, and you can edit them to use how you want. And then on the teacher version of the site, right, you can see some sample answers for some of the questions there, which is great as well. So lesson 1-to-1 features all the introductory activities for historical thinking skills and reasoning process progressions, because that's a great way to start the year, right? Somebody had mentioned earlier that they already started off with the themes, right? Which is great because you want to get students exposed to that at the very beginning. That's one of the things that, luckily for me, I start exposing my students to that in 9th grade because I'm going to get a lot of them in my 10th grade class. But for it, if you don't have that, you know, opportunity, then at the beginning, you want to be exposing them to those themes and those historical thinking skills. And you want to do that right at the beginning of the course. And then we have the videos, right? So we have this mix of videos. There's original videos that are created, and then there are videos from the Crash Course series, right? Khan Academy as well. So there's a nice mix in there. And again, I use these videos sometimes in class, sometimes I assign them for homework. And they're really nice because they do cover a lot of great examples that are not, you know, traditional to a history classroom, which is great for students to get that exposure as well. And then maps, right? What I looked at, well, I thought I invented the term maptivity, but it showed up here. But these are always really great political and thematic maps as well, because oftentimes you see these come up on like short answer questions on the, or as a stimulus for multiple choice questions on the AP exam. So they're help, you know, they not only just help orient students to, you know, where we are, but it's also skills based, right? Continuity and change over time, what's changing in a specific region through a time period as well. So these are great, and you know, students can zoom in on them, or I have a what do you call it, smart board that I can, like, you know, zoom in and use them in class as well. And then for assessments, again, as I mentioned before, I use for multiple choice questions. We also use the Strayer Ways of the World at my school, and I do a lot of the multiple choice questions from there. I heavily use AP Classroom for multiple choice questions. However, for World History Project AP, I do the short answer questions, the LEQs, and the DBQs, because there's so many great examples and so many different opportunities for students to practice, which is really great. So I like to do that. And then I jump on the community and I said, hey, who used this DBQ? What was the results? What tweaks did you make? And I steal great ideas from all the brilliant people in there as well. So then this is like one of the great things about the World History Project AP course is this, the historical thinking skills and reasoning process, right? The progression for them is really nicely laid out to follow. So you can see, right, as each unit goes on, right, there's a progression in these like skills and looking at the reasoning processes, right? So in terms of like those skills, you know, reading and writing, that's going to be salient all throughout, right? Contextualization, right? We're going to see some of that being in Unit 1, going into Unit 3, Unit 5, sourcing, right? Really coming up in Units 4, 5, 6. And then claim testing is one that I'm going through consistently with students. And then for the reasoning processes down here, causation, comparison, CCOT, right? Doing comparisons, right? You need to have something to do that with. So beginning in Unit 3, you have that. But for example, causation, right? You're going to be looking at causation Unit 1, Unit 2 as well. So everything is building on each other really nicely. So are each of these sources like OER Project, Ways of the World, etc., so well aligned that we can easily use an activity from one questions from another primary source? So for the OER project, yes. For the World History Project AP course, right? You can go into a lesson and you can pick particular assets that you want to use. And you're like, okay, I love this particular activity. I'm going to use this in my unit 1 or whatever, and go through and use that material. So again, you don't have to use every single thing one at a time. The important thing is that you want to follow. If you're gonna be using the entire course, you kind of want to just make sure you're following the skills progression. But pretty much when you go into a lesson in that unit, you're going to find something that aligns with building on that skill for students. So I hope, Nicholas, that I answered that question for you. And if not, we can jump back to that later. So I want you to think about what you're currently using as your core curriculum for AP World History Prep, and what are some gaps that exist for you? What are some ways that you're, here's something that I might need, right? And you can drop that in the chat. I'd love to hear from you all about that. Oh, so Ryan is asking me why I use Strayer. So I use Strayer as my main homework readings. And I do that because sometimes I just want to use some of the OER stuff in class at that time. And I want students to always come to class prepped with a background reading. So that's why I use Strayer. So I use Strayer pretty much. It's like their nightly homework readings. And then sometimes it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to give this, section of this chapter for Strayer. I'm going to use an OER text. And I changed that out. But yeah, Strayer is like our nightly, it's like clockwork, because like sometimes I just want to do a nice, cute, clean activity in class with students using some of the OER text, and I'm like, I want a big reveal. I want you to see this for the first time, so they're not looking at that for homework. But using the Strayer text, they come with that general background on the topic already. So Ryan, I hope that answers your question. Well, I would say for me, they kind of supplement each other. But I really heavily use, so for example, students are just reading Strayer for homework, but pretty much, I would say 70% of my classroom activities are coming from the OER project. Yeah, so Katie, hopefully these resources today are super helpful for you. Jamie was part of the pilot project for World Teachers. Awesome, I love that. So you know a lot about this, the material, and so hopefully you can chime into the chat as well. Kathleen says, my second year teaching AP last year. Started with student textbook, and by the second semester, the AMSCO, yeah. I use AMSCO at the end of the school year for my review sessions. So, and Kathleen, I agree with you because of how it's straightforward. It's great for end of year review sessions as well. Like, was like, using my phone to scan in so many of the pages this year because we didn't have money to buy all of them for students, and I didn't want to have to make copies, so I just scanned them in and put them on Canvas. Yeah, so so that's one of the things too that my secret too is I try to give my students a lot of options, Amber, because some of them are just not going to read Strayer, but they may, see an OER article and they're like, oh, it's shorter, it looks prettier, let me give it a go. And so I do try to give students options. So what I do is students get access to all of the OER sources, secondary source texts that we use in class 2 online. So I'm like, you can go back and use that, because I just want you to have some semblance of, you know, what's going on, and I don't really care how you get it. And also that's why I use a lot of the videos from the OER library as well, because they're great for giving students that background, and students are often like, oh, it's like, you know, a 5-minute video. Okay, good, I can go through, and then I have the guiding questions there as well. How you use some of the vocabulary resources that are like in Unit 1. Okay, great. We're gonna dive into Unit 1 in a bit as well. So, Jamie, so hopefully that will be helpful to you. 15 copies of Kathleen. So you know the struggle, Kathleen. 15 copies, 150 students. That math doesn't math. Okay, so yeah, you understand. I love that. You said, do you show videos in class or else? Yeah, so as I was saying, depending for timing purposes, sometimes in class, I'm like, okay, there's a video. I want us to watch this in class because I want to delve into it, and it's worth the time in class for a great classroom activity. And I can pause and, you know, go over. I have them do a lot of turn and talks at their tables. And then, you know, there are the AP questions that are there with the videos and the articles too. And again, I use those for more of a formative assessment. So that will be like, okay, so at the end of this activity, this is going to be a very more higher level question, more AP oriented question for you. And this is great practice. But then the discussion questions there, we use those as a part of the class activity. And sometimes I'm like, oh, this is a video that I would love for you to watch. You can watch this at home. And I do it like that. So, and really you can make that choice however that's going to be best for you. All right, so I wanna jump in here, and we're gonna jump into some breakout rooms in a second. So we're gonna rotate through 3 breakout rooms in a little bit. And so during each of these 15-minute rotations, you're gonna jump in, preview one specific course asset or planning tool, right? And talk about how that might help you in your classroom context. But before we get there, we're gonna jump in and watch a video. And this is nice because the first breakout room we're gonna jump into is on AP themes. And so we're gonna watch this video here to kick us off before we jump into our breakout rooms. So let's go here. And we're just gonna watch this short video here on AP themes.
Humans are storytellers, and all good stories have themes. Themes are broad ideas that run through a story and give it meaning beyond the words. Many of humanity's greatest stories share themes in common: love, revenge, coming of age, the battle between good and evil. Storytellers use themes to make their stories more meaningful to their audience.
Oh, I get it. Like how Harry Potter is about a wizard school, or how the Marvel Cinematic Universe is about superheroes smashing aliens.
Well, not really. Harry Potter isn't about wands, wizards, and dark lords. It's about friendship, and good and evil, and coming of age. And the Marvel movies aren't just flashy fight scenes. Black Panther is about the tension between tradition and change, and how we sometimes need to challenge authority. Themes of fatherhood, motherhood, and sacrifice run through many of the Marvel movies. In a similar way, themes help historians make sense of the past, so it's not just one darn thing after another. Themes help historians tie a bunch of different people and events together into big historical narratives that tell us more about the world than smaller, disconnected narratives ever could.
All right, I get it. So why are we talking about Harry Potter and superheroes? Well, the people who made the AP World History course structured it around 6 themes, which we're going to describe in a minute. Some teachers use these 3-letter acronyms to refer to each theme, but your teacher might use a different set of words or a mnemonic device like spice tea or pieces, but they're all talking about the same 6 themes.
Without a tool like themes, history kind of looks like just a bunch of different dates and names. Organizing past events into themes helps us group different events together so we can tell what changed and what stayed the same. That helps us make comparisons and connections between different regions and time periods.
We know that the AP exam can be stressful, but learning the themes will make the exam a lot easier. Lots of AP exam questions reference the themes. Some questions are obvious about it, but some are downright sneaky. So you need to learn the themes, and you need to practice decoding exam questions to figure out which theme or themes they're asking about.
Think of the themes as 6 different threads that run through the course, connecting different parts of human history. As you read articles and watch videos in this course, you should keep pulling on these threads, uncovering new linkages. Let's take a tour of the 6 themes and get a sense of what they're all about.
Awesome. So these AP themes, right? These are going to help your students make connections across all the lessons and units. And this is going to help them develop a conceptual understanding of the content. And so the themes, these are introduced in Unit 1. And we're going to be looking at those in a second. So you have, somebody had mentioned that they already were using this video this week, which is great. This is one of the ones that I use in class at the beginning because I think it's worth the time to go over at the beginning of the school year. It's an investment that pays off. So, and it's nice too because my students from 9th grade, you know, spice is something that we use in my 9th grade class pretty much every day. And so they're familiar with that. So using this video is a nice refresher for those of them who had my class, but for those who didn't have me in 9th grade, this is a great time to learn about this as well. So again, I invested time. And so this is not the entire video. The video is longer. And so I definitely encourage you to go ahead and check it out. Some teachers, you know, assign this as like a first day homework assignment or something like that, because it's like, you know, a really easy way, low risk way to get into some AP skills work with students. So that's something that you can decide how you will use that as well. So then let's jump over and we're going to jump into our first breakout room. So we're going to be looking at themes here. So we watched the video and Jason just dropped the both text that we're going to use here. So in your breakout rooms, you're going to decide which one you're going to read. For my students, I give half and half to the class because it's just so great to see them compare. Okay, so we had both of these texts on a using a different story to essentially do the same thing. And it's interesting for them to shout out, okay, so, oh my gosh, I identified this as, you know, government, or I identified this as culture. And how are they doing that using these 2 texts? So that's great. So you're going to decide, are you going to do Barcus Aurelius and the Canines or Peter the Pup and the Canine Kingdom? And this is from Unit 1. Read the story on your own. And then as a group, I want you to try to find the 6 AP themes hidden in the story of your choosing. So, and then also think about what other similar activity to this have you used to explore, right, the AP themes in your class. If you're new to teaching AP World History, what other ways might you address the topic early on in your course? And what historical thinking skills do students gain, right, through participating in this? So Jason's going to go ahead and put you all in breakout rooms. Okay, great. So now that we're all back here, I would love to have some people just, unmute and chit chat for a second as we debrief what you just did there and you consider this activity in your classroom. So have you used anything similar to this in your classroom? If you're new, what are some ways that you're thinking that you might use this earlier on in your class to address the themes? And then what historical thinking skills do you think your students gain through their participation in something like this? You can throw it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and share out. Or what are some general questions people are having after engaging with these two texts?
Okay, I'll go. You waited long enough. You were gonna, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. So I actually did this the other day with my kiddos. The first day I introduced the themes. Somebody in the Facebook group had posted this like activity where they were given like just a sentence, like whatever, the Mongols, had created, had a massive empire or something like that, right? And the kids had to then decide which theme they thought it meant. And then they had to find someone across the room, introduce themselves, talk about why they thought theirs was, political or, social or whatever it was. So that was the first day. And then the second day I did this one with the Sparkus Aurelius one. And the kids, I kind of worked through it with them. This is my kids' first AP class. They've never taken an AP course yet. So they're sophomores. So I worked the first one with them, kind of, okay, what does this mean? Let's kind of go through it. And then I gave them the Peter the Pup one, and they could sit at their tables and work together through it. Or, I have kids that are, introvert, and they're like, I'm not doing that. So they could work by themselves. But so that's how I kind of did it with them. And, I think because it's like a story about puppies, it's less like, scary for them to kind of see that. So that's how I used it the other day. So
now, Amber, thank you so much for sharing that. And I saw that Michaela put in the chat that it's good to give them some practice on the themes without stressing about content. And that's one of the things that students love this, because they're like, oh, Mrs. Shah is doing a fun activity with us. And they don't even realize yet that, okay, it might be fun because, we're looking at cats and dogs, but however, we're actually doing some actual AP skills work here. And it's such a low risk way to jump in and get into that. And Amber, one thing that you said that I love is how you use one to model for them, and then you release them with the other one to go do it on their own. And that's such a good strategy. I really, really love that. And I'm going to use it, and I'm not going to give you credit. I'm sorry, but that's going to be a new Tyrone invention. So anyone else want to jump in and share any other thoughts on this? And thanks, Amber, for being the first, and Michaela for in the chat too. Any other thoughts on this? Any other questions? Oh, sorry. Katie, I didn't forgot that you posted about the 2 pots of porridge. Now I'm torn. Well, I mean, you could kind of do either. I use these with my AP students in particular. So because I just think it's the contrast of the stories are like, really nice for how I want to go about, but I'm sure you could use the 2 pots of porridge as well. And that's the nice thing too. You can go in and make some choices here that you're like, oh, I'm going to do this. So, or maybe you can even present them to your students and say, which one of these sounds, which one of these, like, do you want to engage with, food or animals? Right. If no one else has any other questions or anything else that they want to, Kathleen says, I think I will use this next week when we start class. Definitely. And Kathleen, if you want to like look at any ways that people are using this, go into the OER AP community and, type in AP themes and see what conversations people are having around it as well. Amber gave us some great suggestions a while ago, which I'm sure you can still do, like I will as well. And Oliver said, I love this. The students come in on Wednesday, which will really be an introduction classroom policy type of day. But after that, I want to introduce them to AP terms and practice. And I think, okay, yeah, that's the thing too. So the first couple of days for me with students, it's like first day come in, it's just kind of like getting to know you. I want you to feel like, you belong here, that kind of thing. And we have to do a bunch of SEL activities. But then I kind of like weave this activity into my, SEL work too, because it's kind of like, okay, having students like using such, again, a low risk way, not stressing over content really, and jumping in and, it's, more relaxing, way for them to engage with this at the beginning. Oh, I love that, Kathleen. I love, love, love that. And of course, we just had the Women's World Cup, so could also provide a lot of conversation there. That's great. All right, so we're gonna go and we're gonna transition over here, and we're going to look at this CCOT intro activity, right? So continuity and change over time. This is one of the skills that my students struggle with a lot. And Jason dropped in the chat, right, the student activity and the teacher copy of the activity as well, right? And when we look at CCOT, it's students need to have that capacity to evaluate, right, historical continuity and change over time. And in order for them to do that, right, they need to be able to say, okay, so what is happening in this specific place, right, over a period of time? What is happening thematically, right, over time? What is staying the same? What is changing over time? And so it's really important for them to develop a capacity to do this throughout the course. And so beginning here in Unit 1, this is a great activity for them to, and again, a low risk way, right, for them to jump in here and get into practicing some of these skills. So we're seeing here, they're going to be looking, right, at a farm, right? So what's changing over, what's staying the same, and what's changing over time in terms of farming. So what you're going to be doing is like in your small groups, you're going to be doing this activity. So after you've gone through 5 minutes of the activity, right, in your breakout rooms, I want you to think about the following, right? What questions or comments that do you have about the activity? What supports or additional resources, if any, will your students need as they complete this activity, right? Start to think about, well, you know your students better than anyone. So, how might I need to make some, adjustments to this, some modifications to this for my students? And what skills or concepts will students practice as a result of participation in this activity? So just a hint, right? You'll always find sample answers on the teacher copy, which is that second link that Jason has in the chat for you that you can look at, after you've done trying for yourself. So Jason is going to do those breakout rooms now, and you can go ahead. All right, great. So that now we have everyone back in here. Let's do a quick debrief on this. I have some additional things that I want to talk about this, because it's one of my favorite things to do at the beginning of the school year. But I would just love to hear from you all. What are some questions or comments that you have about the activity? What are some ways that you're thinking about when you could use this in your classroom, or modifications that you would make to it in your classroom as well? And again, if it's easier, do it in the chat, but if you want, you could do it in the chat, but if it's easier, you could just unmute yourself and jump on. I'd love to hear from as many of you as possible.
So Tyrone, our group was kind of back and forth, like, okay, we see the quality of this activity, we see how it's safe, sharing, community building, looking at low risk images that go over CCOT. But at the same time, we also know that we revisit CCOT later on, and knowing our kids, do they remember the farm activity? We end up reteaching it anyway. So is this best for these first 2 weeks? We're in a time constraint, especially those of us who start in September 5th.
Yeah.
Or later. So we're like, okay, I'm gonna put this in my back pocket and kind of feel out the first couple of weeks and see if this is something that we can that I would throw in there if that, but we also have to get into content because we're so pushed.
Yeah.
But you can't miss the skills. So I just hear me going back and forth. And sticky notes in 3 colors for 5 classes with 30 kids each. That's a lot of expensive sticky notes. So I was going to modify it with butcher paper on the table.
Yeah. So that was, Kristen, that was a really great point to bring up. Time, right? We're all crunched, right? Again, there's certain things that I believe in invest in the time for, and for me in my classroom, this is one of them, right? But there are other people out there that have other ways that they might introduce CCOT that is, less time consuming, more tied to content. But for me, it's like the beginning of the year, I'm going to use a couple of those intro days that I have to do, getting to know you. Again, using something like this that's low risk to get students into some sort of practice into understanding what CCOT is, how we're going to use it. And my students remember this because they always bring it up. They're like, oh my gosh, this is like the farm. And I'm like, yes, kind of so let's use that mode of thinking that we use there, because we're not always, and another reason why I love this, because it's one of the times where I can get them to get up and do some movement around the class. And I'm a sticky note person, so I do a lot of activities on sticky notes because I like to have them, I like controlled chaos, so I like to have them write on it at their desk and then orderly go put it up and then go away, go back to their seat. So yeah, but I do get your concerns with the sticky notes and stuff. So I think, again, use your best judgment. Do you think you need to do this right away at the beginning? If you're this would be really good to set my kids up, great. But if you're like, I can bring up CCOT at a another time with, you know, another activity like this, then obviously, right, do what is going to be best for your students. And again, you could type in CCOT activity in the OER community, in the AP World History Project AP, in the World History Project AP community, and see what are some other great examples that people are using. I see Kathleen in the chat, you said, when do you do this? Do you print out images? We don't have, so, well, I am lucky enough that I'm at a one-to-one school, so my students have devices, so I haven't printed anything since the Obama administration. So everything I just send to them on Canvas, and they have it digitally. How I do this in my classroom is I have two pieces of chart paper on the wall, and like a string, and I have students put over here what are the continuities, so what are the things that have remained the same, and then over here what are the changes, and then I have them just use a little you know, after they've discussed a little bit, kind of then like spread them out along the line, because sometimes I want them to get into the idea of processing that, like, okay, like some things aren't necessarily absolute in terms of continuities and changes all the time, and they don't want to necessarily think about them that way. So I modify it a little that way. Can you project them on the board? Yeah, I mean, you can put them up on the whiteboard as well. Oh yeah, you can change the color of the sticky notes as well. I ordered just a ton of them, and I have, you know, my friends who have discretionary income, and I'm just like, I work at a public school, help me out here. So, and I just take what I can get. So I just use them however. Have you tried using Jamboard instead of sticky notes? If so, I am not a Jamboard user, Wiley, so I've never done that. I don't know if anybody else has used Jamboard, and if you have, definitely shout out.
I was just thinking with Jamboard, it would take care of the sticky note issue if you're in a one-to-one school.
Yeah,
I've never used it for this, so I'm not sure if it works for this, how well. The other thing is, if you make a Jamboard for each thing, they will, and like the sticky notes, they will have a copy of it when it's finished.
Yeah.
And they can use that to study in the future. That was my thinking.
Well, that's why I second it, because I use Jamboard all the time for like collective note taking. And so the scholars can take different colored sticky notes. And so you could customize it that way.
Good to know. Thank you for hearing someone who's done it, because I haven't done it yet. So I was curious. Thanks.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing. And so I don't know if anybody's familiar with Mentimeter, but I use Mentimeter a lot in my classroom when my school doesn't decide to block it for some reason, and I have to call them to say, like, what are you doing? But it's a great tool, and I use that for a lot of activities where I'm like, okay, like, you know, it's, you know, April, and I've run out of a lot of the, you know, materials that I have around the room. What can I do? And so I use that throughout the year as well. Is a great way to interact with, have students interact with each other and share out in a multitude of different ways. So that I don't know how that compares to Jamboard, but that's something I use like that. Any other questions on this one? I want to get us into our last thing before. What's the name of that? Oh, it's Mentimeter, MENTI meter. And if you do sign up, the free, you can use it for free, but it's kind of limited, and you have to make multiple different slides. But if you do want to get a subscription, make sure you get the educator subscription, which is more discounted. And so it's cheaper, because I started using it during virtual teaching during the pandemic, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. And I still use it in my classroom because it's great for student interaction. I don't know, my students, anytime they're doing anything that's like, not just like traditional pen paper, they are all excited for it or whatever. So I like to change it up a little. All right, so just really quickly, if there are any other questions or concerns about this, do just drop it in the chat. I'm just going to quickly go over some more information here on the CCOT progression, right? So students, they're introduced to the CCOT tool, right, to analyze a series of images, short description, pick up changes and continuities, right? They're going to work together to do this. And again, you're all thinking about ways that you can modify something like this, right? That's CCOT activity 1. CCOT activity 2, looking at networks of exchange and land-based empires, right? Now students are going to work together to answer a question about the biggest continuities and changes that are taking place in trade networks. And so this now, they're more so looking here at actual content, right? How are they going to use this, right? Then in activity 3, land-based empires and transoceanic connections, highlight the changes and continuities in unit 4, right? Then they're going to categorize and label these according to the AP themes, right? Political, environment, economy, right? And then we're going to look at if each of their changes and continuities are positive and negative, and graph those as well. And activity 4 here, transoceanic connections to revolutions, right? Students are going to work individually, pull out changes and continuities they find from unit 4 and unit 5, right? And then they're going to look for those AP themes, innovations, economic, political, right? And now they're working together to craft thesis statements in response to a CCOT prompt. So you can see how it's building on each other here. And activity 5, empire to global conflict, right? Students are going to evaluate cross thesis statements, right? 2-paragraph response to a CCOT prompt. And again, you're seeing the elevation of the skills here as well. And then for activity 6, this is unit comparisons, right? Now they're doing a full skill demonstration here, right? So they're writing an essay about continuity and changes that occur in the world across multiple units, right? Describe and analyze the most significant, right? Changes and continuities from 1450 to the present for 2 of the following themes, whether political, innovation, economic, or environment. And I saw some questions coming up. So these are CCOT is similar to Farm 1 that we just looked at. Not really in the same way that you would do that activity, right? But that sets the stage for how students are going to be thinking about continuity and change over time. And so that is basically like, okay, so here's this skill, here's how you need to use it throughout as we move along in the units, based on a 45 minutes class period or 90 minute, 45 minutes. And thank you, Jason, for that. Yeah. I have 90-minute blocks, so I'm always thinking in 90-minute blocks. So sorry to the 45-minute block people. And then last but not least, I want to when I have enough time to jump into here. So our last breakout room, I want you to do a deep dive exploration of Unit 1. So I want you to explore Unit 1 on the World History Project AP website. In your breakout group, what questions do you have as you plan out this initial unit for your students? Some of you have already started, so maybe you've already began to do some of this. What student skill or content gains do you anticipate as a result of using this approach, as a result of using the World History Project AP resources? So you can go ahead And oh yeah, so this will be shorter. So this one is going to be 5 minutes. This one is going to be 5 minutes for your breakout rooms. So we'll be back in 5.
Are you going to send out a recording of this by any chance?
Jason, will there be a recording available?
So the recording will be available, but it'll be posted on the site. Usually turnaround time is about a week, depending on how busy things are. But I'd say around this time next week for sure will be available on the OER Project website.
Awesome. Thank you. Because I need to get going because my school starts in about 15 minutes because I'm on the other side of the world. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Welcome back. We'll just give it a few more seconds so we can get everybody back from their sessions. Then we'll begin our debrief and then wrap up.
Well, before everybody comes back, I just want to say thank you so much for hosting this. You've been absolutely fantastic. Just great resources. You've really guided us really through the whole site. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Francis. I appreciate that. All righty, so we're all back then, and Jason has dropped some amazing resources in the chat. I want you all to
I'm sorry, I'm going to redo it. I just put the way I dropped it was really ugly. I'm going to see if I can fix it so it's a little bit easier to read.
Okay, no problem. So we'll start our debrief while you do that. So I would love if some people could, jump on, unmute yourselves and just share out what you thought about the unit, right? As you're planning, what are some questions that you have as well? And obviously you can drop in the chat as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning on doing the Unit 1 introduction article, just because I really think it sets up the whole worlds together, worlds apart theme quite nicely. And I really like, not in that article, but how it has the teacher guided questions in the lesson plan part of it.
Yeah.
To kind of show, oh, I can use these and leave my class in the discussion through them. I can make them like a reading assignment and have them write them down before and then discuss in groups so we can kind of go over it. I just think it's a great kind of succinct intro to the unit. Once we're kind of done with the, hey, back to school, this is crazy stuff, when we kind of get into that, all right, now let's start thinking about it. It's a great introduction, I think.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Nick. Yeah. And again, like Nick's already thinking about how can I make modifications and change up for my classroom, you definitely want to be thinking about that as well. And the OER AP World History Project AP community is great for that. Great to go get ideas from people there. Anyone else? What are you thinking, or some questions, especially if you have any questions that I haven't answered yet, that you're like, oh, definitely, I want to get an answer for that. I'll try my best or lead you in the right direction. I like to give, a good amount of wait time. So if there are no other questions, and if there are and they come up, just interrupt me as I go through. So thinking about ongoing support and next steps, right? Going in and getting started. Obviously, there are the teacher resources for each unit. Nick just mentioned those, right? So you want to go in and look at, okay, so obviously you have the teacher facing side, which is great and useful for you as well, right? You can see here where they have the downloadable materials. Those are great, right? Google Docs for each of the resources. I, again, use them as Word documents, but if you're a Google Classroom school, you can do that as well. You have the unit guides to help you go through each unit as well. Then when you look at the teacher resources for each unit, the teacher guidance, the lesson materials, the videos, the student notebooks, all of these are things that you can utilize as you go through. Katie, my internet is being a pain and I don't want to drop out mid-comment. This was, okay. Okay, I'm very, very happy. I'm very happy. And Katie, like, again, the teacher community, please jump in there, and no question is a silly question. So many times, like, I'm just wondering the most random thing, and I'm just like, okay, I'm going to the community, and I post it there, and I get the most amazing ideas from people. So if you ever feel like, okay, this is something I'm wondering about, or I just want to like a springboard this idea. Like, for example, I'm the only person who teaches AP World at my school. So the community is really my PLC. So that's really important. And then in terms of the planning resources, this page here, the teacher resource page, is really, really important. Jason dropped all of these links in the chat as well, right? So you have the AP course guide, the CED alignment guide, the course plans, right? You have the year-long, the 24-week-long one, the progression placements, the syllabus, and the annotated outline. The annotated outline is one of my favorite things. I literally have it printed out, and it's great to see what is coming up. And at the bottom of it, it will tell you, there's like a color coded at the bottom. It's red, purple, and I'm messing up the other colors now. But anyway, it shows you what are the essential activities that you should do, especially if you're following, if you're going to use this as your course, what are the essential activities, and then what are the ones that you can choose from. And that's great to help with planning for those of you who might feel a little overwhelmed with the planning. Using the annotated outline for the course, it's a great way to show you how you can manage planning and what you want to do. And so you go here, right, on the OER website, professional development page, right? The teacher community is here. This is a, really fantastic tool for you. We just had our conference the other day. Hopefully, if you weren't here this year, you could be there next year, which is great. And then in terms of professional development offerings, we do have specific skill clinic sessions, which are great. Even though I've been doing this for a long time, I love to go to those to just get a refresher as well on, you know, skills, how are people doing it, listen to other people, how they're doing those as well. And then the OER presentation sessions. So just like you signed up for today, so you could sign up for those. And then here, right, the teaching AP World History, these modules are great for you to just go through, focusing on, you know, how do you prepare to go in and teach the content and the historical thinking practices. So that's also really nice. And so obviously I've been talking a lot about the teacher community. Again, one of my favorite things. And so that's one of the things that I rely on. Do you know if these sessions provide PD hours, New York? I'm not sure. That might be a, Jason, do you know if they get PD hours for these?
In most cases, they do. So the specifics kind of vary depending on the state you're coming from, but for the most part, we have on our site a link on the PD page. Actually, specifically, will give you all the information we have right now, up to date by state, of what we offer hours for based upon your state's requirements. So, like an example is that for our OER Project conference, we had 2 sessions on the climate project, one of our courses. But because it didn't fall under some states' offerings, some people weren't able to get hours for that, some people were. But most of the skill clinics, most of the OER present sessions, most of the onboarding / planning sessions will be a credit offering for our educators. But yes, for more specifics, check out the PD page. It'll give you everything that's necessary for your state in terms of reporting information.
Yeah, so Kathleen, if you look at the screen right here where my cursor is, the professional development tab right here, you'd go under there, and that's what Jason was referring to. So you could figure out if that you could get hours for this. I know about getting those PD hours.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I poked around a bit. I just couldn't tell if it was like a certificate or how you get it, but it sounds, sorry, I'm thinking, it sounds like the it'll say it there. Like for this session, for example, like, is this something that you would get hours for?
Yes, you would.
Okay.
And again, like, let me say with 90% certainty, you probably would. Again, I don't know about the requirements for your specific area, but the website would fill in the last bits and pieces. The details are important to you. But generally speaking, yes, people get credit for this.
And then Amber, I saw, do you use the themes notebook activity? So that's one piece that I sort of have students doing a running themes chart that's very similar to the themes notebook, but not as detailed, because for me, my planning and time, not the same, but I do have, so at the end of each unit, we go over and review the major themes that they're keeping on like a little chart. So it's like a sort of modified. So hopefully that answers your question. And then the course plan work time, obviously, Jason dropped this in the chat as well, so that you can go and take a look at that. You know, look at it and think about what are some ways that you would modify this course plan to fit your needs for what you're going to be doing for whether you do a half-year course or a full-year course. And that is our time that we have. So if you have any questions at all, please reach out to the team at team@oerproject.com. And I gave you my email earlier at the beginning. You can use that as well. And you can find me in the AP community as well if you have any other questions. And thank you all so much for coming out. I learned so much from you all. And I'm sorry if I take your activity and I don't give you credit, but you guys were fantastic. And I really, really appreciate you all contributing this evening. I'm happy, Francis, that you feel more confident. Great.